Welcome back to the Four Podmen, your weekly dose of all things pro wrestling on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. Audio versions of the show are available through Anchor, Spotify, Podbean, Apple iTunes, wherever you pick up your audio versions of your show. And if you'd like to contact the show, on Facebook, the Four Podmen, on Twitter, at @TPodmen. Joining me tonight for a review of Money in the Bank 2021, Darren McCumsky. Darren, how we doing, my man?
Hey, Noel, how are we, man? All good?
Brilliant, great to have you on. Our viewers would obviously recognise Darren from our upper tier Monday mashups, Legend series, international episodes, and of course that classic Collector's Corner episode when we went through all that fantastic stuff. So, without a doubt, wrestling in the
I don't know whether you can see over me shoulder here. Can you?
Just
There's
about,
a couple of deliveries there just arrived, so we're squaring up for Collector's Corner round 2 at the minute. I should have a nice little show for you guys, yeah?
That's coming to you next week. And what I was going to actually say to you as well, if you do get a few more deliveries, what you should do is keep them boxed and we'll unbox them as part of the episode as well, just as a few surprises.
Yeah, we can do that, man. Yeah, that'd be cool, actually. I like the idea of that.
Without 100%, of course we can. Well, anyway, let's get into this. Money in the Bank. What a pay-per-view. Absolutely blew me away. WWE is back with a bang. Wrestling fans are back with a bang. You know what I mean? AEW, look out. WWE is back. What was you thinking?
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing, man. Like, the show from start to finish was just absolutely top drawer. You know, I've been a massive WWE, WWF fan over the years, and I never kind of swayed towards WCW or AEW or anything like that. And for the last kind of couple of years, WWE have been taking a lot of stick. They've been, you know, it's dying and the company's dying and it needs a new direction and blah, blah, blah. They dropped an absolute bomb last night, man. That show that's probably the best pay-per-view we'd had in maybe 3 or 4 years. It was absolutely amazing. Really was.
I mean, it's fair to say, I mean, they've kind of, this year, they've been knocking it out of the park, haven't they? I mean, the Rumble was absolutely brilliant. You know, the Chamber, I thought, was really good. Mania was solid, you know what I mean? And I think they've been progressing as they went along for fans coming back. But I think they set the scene on Friday night with SmackDown, didn't they? Because that was a kind of a prelude of what was to come.
And I think what you're saying is perfectly right. They've started now to build storylines again. We stopped seeing these things happen in the flick of a switch, you know. It's not one guy gets rolled out of the ring and another guy jumps in. We're rolling with storylines now. We're building to something. Like, all of the great rivalries we have over the years have built and built and built. You look back at like those Shawn Michaels Undertaker matches at WrestleManias, you know, that built, and they were going on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and that got you to the point where you were just champing at the bit for Mania. You know, and for the last few weeks, they've started to throw in the little bits with Seth Rollins and Edge, where you could kind of go, something going on here. Obviously, then with McIntyre and Jinder coming back, they started to build a bit there. You know, there was other stuff going on behind the scene. So they really started to change the creative process, I feel, which is benefited them massively, you know?
Yeah, it's like as if the fight is back in the process again, really, isn't it? And it's like, you know, we'll give you a little bit and we'll tiptoe this along, but it doesn't get lost in the wash of a pay-per-view like a Money in the Bank, where it could easily happen. I've always been a huge fan of this pay-per-view, and even the matches when they were at WrestleMania. I think it's a very underrated match in fans' eyes at times and stuff like that, because it can be car crash, it can be crazy at times because of the stuff these guys try. But this is one of these matches where you can go out there and literally try what you want, and if it comes off, awesome. If it doesn't come off, it's not the worst thing in the world because you're trying crazy stuff, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, fans are going to adhere themselves to guys that'll put it all out there and give it a go. You know, we just spoke off here about, you know, I think Ricochet did himself a massive favour last night. Yeah, he didn't win the match, but, you know, what he did out there and the reaction of the fans and stuff like that, I think he'll get a little look in now for the next few weeks anyway. And if he can build on that, you never know where it goes.
I think when they hit the bullseye on a solid pay-per-view like this, where it was like solid from top to bottom, there's really no losers. Everyone comes out of it a winner, really, don't they? Because, you know, I can't think of a single competitor last night or anything that sort of like was a loser on the night, if you like. They absolutely knocked it out of the park. And not only that, they set great groundwork as well for SummerSlam, which I think is going to be an absolute belter in Vegas.
So SummerSlam is really bubbling along nicely now. You're probably you know, even now you can probably think of 4 matches that are going to be on that card that you're going to think, can't wait to see that, can't wait to see that, you know. And they even last night, for me, there's something that they haven't done a lot recently, was they started it with the pre-show. And I mean, the Usos and the Mysterios was lit, absolutely lit. You know, I'm a massive Usos fan, and I think they're the best team in the WWE. I think they're the best team in the world. You know, I think they're up there with some of the greats at this stage. You know,
because they've evolved so much as well. Because we remember them coming out with the war paint and the grass skirts and all that kind of thing, and to see them now, you know, they went through the whole Usos penitentiary thing and all that kind of stuff. But
because at one stage they did all the body paint and stuff, remember, and it was like, it's cringy, you know. But I mean, The Rock went through the Rocky Maivia phase.
Yeah.
So that it's all character building, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Usos penitentiary for me was where they really started when they done that series of matches with the New Day. That's when they really put themselves on the map. But last night, you know, was tops. Like, you gotta say, Dominic Mysterio, man, for a guy that's only in the business, I know obviously been brought up in the business, but a guy that's maybe in the ring maybe 2 years, he's flying, man.
Yeah,
he really is. Like,
he's beginning. There's a number of people in there now that are starting to get it, and we'll touch on them as we go down through the card. But definitely one to watch out for. But I love when they did that video package with Roman and the two boys after winning. I won the tag belts, and they have all the gold, even though the belts are silver, but they've all the gold.
Yeah.
And I love the dynamic between the two Uso brothers. You've got one who's fully in worshiping Roman, and the other one is kind of like, I'm not too sure. I'm trying to figure this out, you know, but I'm nobody's bitch. But it's like, oh yeah, man, I'm with you.
I'm good.
Know?
I'm with you.
Good,
yeah. They played it very well.
And you know, the funny thing about it is, I think they're going to swerve us. The guy who's not too sure is going to be the guy who's loyal, I bet you. And the guy who's all in with the hopes, he's the guy who's probably going to end up turning down the road. I could see it. But it's so funny to see the dynamic. And they're so good now in front of the camera in terms of their promos and their mic and their delivery and all, don't they? They just look awesome.
And I mean, the play on the driving thing, obviously, as well, was quality, you know. And you could hear the fans outside in the arena. They were wetting themselves, and everyone was like, right, so, you know, it was very, very good.
Absolutely.
I have to say.
Let's talk about the fans. I mean, to have fans back, I mean, it really isn't the same without fans. Sure, it's not.
No, it's not. And I suppose that's something, like, again, when we had Mania last year, that's something that for me, it lacked that, you know. And I was kind of really struggled to get my head around the whole no fan things, because for me, the pop of the fans, like, I would feel that pop, you know. And I would, like, you know, when I've seen stuff happen, I've woken my wife up here beside me some nights to tell her, like, that the Hardy Boys have returned at WrestleMania, and she's like, I'm up for work in 6 hours, I'm gonna slap the head off you. And you know, and I'm jumping around the room with my t-shirt off, like, you know, as if, and this is like 2-3 years ago, so I'm 35 years of age, man. This just grabs you and it rolls you like that, you know.
Yeah, it does, big time. Let's the other thing I wanted to mention, like, I mean, in terms of production value, I mean, when you see those on-screen graphics for those entrances and stuff like that and all, it's absolutely awesome looking, isn't it? Like, I mean, I noticed that especially in Roman's entrance when he's back like that, they have that silhouette up there, that image of him hanging there and stuff like that. It just looks amazing. And Bobby Lashley's entrance, that almighty one with the lightning and stuff like that, it just looks awesome, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then and for me, I suppose that's one of the things where I would struggle with some of the other organizations. Like, I see AEW and I'm just like, and I know there's lots of fans out there of AEW. I see AEW and I'm just like, this is just an indie show. This is like down the community center, down the CY, with, you know, Johnny from up north throwing a few rights and lefts. Like, it's just, when you see last night and you see from top to bottom the production, the audio, the sound, the light, and the whole thing. I mean, the stage last night, there was a picture of the stage on Facebook about 2 or 3 hours before it kicked off, and you were like, wow, I just can't wait for this, you know.
Yeah, the stage reminded me very much. I was at WrestleMania 35, and the stage reminded me kind of like that stage where you walk out and it's a big panoramic kind of stage and stuff like that. You know, obviously not to the scale of Mania, but
no, but
I mean?
it was.
But it looked awesome. Like, they just
did really look awesome, man. Yeah, it did.
Let's get into the card then. Let's kick off Women's Money in the Bank. This was like, I looked at this And I wasn't too sure about it because, first of all, I couldn't kind of figure out. I was trying to kind of figure out, well, who are they going to pin it on here? Who's going to be the girl, you know, or the woman? And I was looking at it and I was going, well, they could go with Nikki, but I'm not too sure. I was heavily favouring Naomi because just what the work rate that she puts in and stuff like that and all. And then I was also thinking, well, Selena Vega's just come back. Is there kind of something with that there? Obviously, with what's happened with Alistair. Shout out to Alistair, wearing it out of solidarity. But you know what I mean? I was kind of thinking, what is their thinking on this? Like, where are they going to go with this? But the match itself, what was your thinking on the match?
That was, again, so I was reading a lot of stuff online and stuff, and kind of people were really favouring Liv Morgan. And I was kind of like, that's a strange one for me, you know, to give it to Liv like that, because I don't feel like she's as over as she could be. And I think in the ring, she can still look quite green at times, you know.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about that match was I went into it and I kind of thought, you know what, there's about 5 of these that could legitimately walk out with this. And I even thought you could have possibly seen one of the tag champs end up with it, you know, because I mean, they put Natalya over quite well. And Tamina in that ring is just an absolute monster of the lady side, you know, she really is. So again, she's a legitimate contender for it. I like what they did with Alexa Bliss. I like that the girls buried her, you know, that she wasn't kind of beaten softly. It protects the character really well.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm sure she's going to pick something out of what happened last night, and she'll probably pick someone out and say it was your fault, and she'll go down that route, and we'll see something like that. But I think it was great to see Nikki get an opportunity, you know. She's very, very good in the ring, you know, and her mic skills for me have gotten better over the last few years and stuff like that. And I think the gimmick is something people could buy into, you know, I really do. So yeah, for me, it's a good direction for them to go, you know. I think it's better at times to roll the dice on things like that than just pin it on someone that's had it 2 or 3 times, or pin it on, you know, somebody that we expect to have it, maybe a former world champion like Naomi, you know.
Yeah,
so I'm happy.
I was very impressed with the reception Liv Morgan got when she came out. Like, I mean, the crowd popped well for her and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know? And the girls all looked $1 million as they always do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I thought Naomi's work rate in there and her use of the ladders and stuff like that. I thought she was absolutely sensational, Naomi. You know, she's a proper athlete, that girl. You know?
She is a proper athlete, man, and she's built as well for a girl that moves like that. She's not a small girl. She rear-ended one of the girls at one stage, where she was 4 or 5 feet off the air, and there was rotation and everything. You were like, wow, that's so athletic, man, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking at some of that, you know, some of those springboards she did with the ladders and stuff like that, using the ladder to flip them and stuff like that. And all.
Very Kofi Kingston-esque from years gone by, you know?
Yeah, very potentially Usos. You know, so the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, really, you know. But yeah, really, really good. Looked on top of her game. Comes out like a superstar, looks like a superstar. But yeah, talking about Nikki, I mean, it was just so cool. Like, I mean, look, we're all Hurricane fans. We love the Hurricane. We love this superhero gimmicky type of stuff, you know. And it's amazing, isn't it? Sometimes when a wrestler does put on the mask, that they can hide behind the mask and become something, and, like, you know, they can put it out there and their character shines as much as they're hidden. You know, that kind of way. And
it's funny because it's literally only an eye mask.
Yeah.
But it's changed her look completely.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, wow, this is a complete, because the Nikki that was Insanity, you know, she was so dark and, you know, she was deranged, and we had all of this, and now you're like, it's just a completely different character. She's evolved quite nicely, you know. She really has.
We've been talking a lot on the podcast recently about how WWE are doing a great job at the moment of peeling the layers back on talent to let them flourish and shine. I mean, Roman is a brilliant example. How they peeled him back and turned him into this monster heel. It's unbelievable, the work they're doing with the Usos and how they've developed them, and many other characters there, how they're showing them coming through in terms of their real talent, in terms of the dynamic of them, stuff like that. So yeah, she's a brilliant example of that. But yeah, the ending of the match, the 6 girls are up on the ladder, and the next thing, she just appears out of nowhere, unhooks the case, and off she goes.
And they were all so startled. They all just kind of looked at each other and went, did that just happen? You know, and I suppose, as you were saying, it fitted the character really well.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't jump. There was no splash off the top. There was nothing like that. She just jumped up, nicked it, and legged it. And then everyone was like, quick as a flash. It was really, really cool.
It was nearly like as if it wasn't planned and she had just gone into business for herself and said, I'm taking the case anyway. I don't care. You know what I mean? But I think it's really, really important, as you touched on, that they do these with some of these characters now, because like we can't continually circle around like Charlotte, Rhea, Bianca, Bailey, Sasha. You know, we need to bring someone up into the mix at times. This is how we build stars. This is how it's done, you know. So
well, I mean, we've the problem with the girls you're talking about, not the problem, you know, because again, they're top athletes, they're amazing wrestlers, but you get to a stage as a fan where when you've seen something so often, it can be hard to then get excited for it again, you know. And I suppose we'll probably talk about it later, but that's where I suppose I'm kind of excited about, you know, the return of Becky, because I mean, for me, I think we can only see Becky and Belair now. You know, I think if they go back towards the Charlotte direction, I think it could be a mistake, you know.
Unless Nikki Cross comes into the mix. Not Nikki Cross, Nikki ASH.
Nikki ASH, yeah. Yeah, you know, I suppose it's going to be, I'd like to see maybe Nikki decide to take on Charlotte and then see Becky and Bianca and maybe have Sasha return into that or something like that. And, you know, and you've got Asuka in the mix as well. Like the women's division now is, I mean, you remember the Divas division. I mean, it was so bad, man. And the matches were, that was when people were making their tea. When Monday Night Raw was on, you know, the Divas matches came on and lads go out of the room where they make popcorn or they make tea or whatever. And now you just don't do that. Now you're like, I'm going to miss something.
Yeah, now they're tuning in for the women's division. It's a big part of the fan base now.
Really is.
And certainly, if not on a parallel with the men, certainly nearly above it in terms of, and they have all the talent in there. I mean, the women's division is stacked from NXT all the way through, is drenched in talent. It's unbelievable. Like everyone is top notch now.
I think other than Edge returning at the Rumble, the last two women's Royal Rumbles have been equally as good, if not better, than the men's. You know, and that's a big plus for WWE. You know, because 4 years it was the dog was walking and the tail was getting dragged behind it, and now it's, you know, it's all alongside it. It's really good.
Let's move on. Raw tag match: Styles and Omos versus the Viking Raiders. I have to say, I'm a huge Viking Raiders fan. I think they're awesome.
Yeah. Well, they're two nice, big, burly lads. They're great size, but they're so athletic as well, man. They really are, you know. But I got to say, star of the show, Omos was unbelievable, man. He really, really was. I know there was a little slip towards the end when he went to pick up Eric. But again, for the first few weeks, you were thinking, where are they going to go with this? Whereas now it's building. I looked at it last night and I thought to myself, we could actually see, you remember the Shawn Michaels Diesel?
Yeah.
Remember when Diesel was the bodyguard? We could see that quite soon. Yeah. And you could see people pin their the tail on Omos and be like, that's the way we want to go. We like Omos, you know, and he could be a big face with the right kind of turn on him.
He's a monster of a man, isn't he?
He's huge.
You see him in there and he's choke slamming the Viking Raiders, and the guys look so small beside him. And these are big men, like, you know.
He picked up Ivar to power slam him. Did you see him power slam him? Yeah. And he had him over his shoulder, and he was just standing there walking around with him on his shoulder as if he was like, you know, tin of beans. And you were like, Jesus, man, this guy is huge. He made the boys look very small, but I was really impressed with him, man. And even his work, you know, his camera work and the stuff. He was in the ring and he was looking at the camera. He's like, "This is my house," and he put his character across again much better for me than he has maybe in the last little while, you know.
Yeah, he certainly looks like he's putting in a lot of work, all right. And of course, being around AJ Styles, there's going to be a certain demand of performance level there, because AJ Styles is, you know, absolutely top of the chain in there in terms of performance and stuff like that.
100%.
Interesting dynamic though between the two of them, isn't it? Like, you never put them together.
No, and I suppose to begin with, it was a bit of a shock. You were looking at this thing going, what is they doing here, you know? And again, you're kind of thinking, is this going to be like Raw Underground? Is this going to be massive one week and the next week it's been cancelled, you know? Yeah. And you kind of didn't know where it was going to go. And then all of a sudden you were like, all right, you know, and they disappeared for a couple of weeks, came back, and then almost was like this man mountain. And I mean, he's so big. He is genuinely, if you got a face turn, he's genuinely a legitimate threat to the likes of Lesnar, Lashley, McIntyre, Reigns, because of his size.
Yeah. I think it'll take a bit of time, though. I think he's very comfortable
Of
in there with
course.
AJ.
Yeah.
So I think it'll take a bit of time for him to adjust to be on his own. But he's an absolute, like, when they talk about monsters, I mean, it's incredible. Like, I thought, though, the Viking Raiders were unbelievable. I love the way, of course, they look like a tag team, which is always a great starting
Yes.
point. You know what I mean? As you said, two burly big guys who can absolutely move. When you see that guy doing a cartwheel for his size, it's so impressive. But even the way they interact in terms of those tag team moves and stuff like that, they're so athletic, but the moves are so powerful as well. They absolutely knock the shit out of you when they hit you with them and stuff,
Yeah, no, they do. And I suppose you're 100% right in what you're saying. As a tag team, they look like they get the best out of each other. I couldn't imagine them being as good as singles, just because one looks at the other and it's just like, boom, everything clicks in a second like that, and they're rolling through those moves, and they are very, very good, they really are. Like,
yeah, definitely the belts are coming their way sooner rather than later, because they just look the business. AJ, of course, gives us everything that he normally gives us, those springboards off the ropes and stuff like that. I mean, he's just so athletic and just brilliant,
Do you think it's a strange direction for him at the minute, though? I mean, he's got to be looking around and saying, you look at what's out there, and I know you're talking about two big guys in Reigns and Lashley, and I mean, we'll talk later about who else has just come back, and there's other guys sitting at home as well. So there's a lot of big guys, and does that kind of dynamic suit somebody like AJ?
I think it does, insofar as that he's a consummate professional. And he's also, what we forget about AJ Styles as well, is although he's been in WWE for a period of time, like, he's kind of a veteran of the game now when you think about it. He's been around for, I think he debuted in, what was it, 2000 or 2001 or 2002 or something, when he was in Ring of Honor and stuff like that and all, you know what I mean? So he's been wrestling, 20 years, say, you know what I mean? So he's not new to it. And he understands that there's a time for a star like him to step out of that position into this position and help out, and that there's a time for him to step back in there again, you know what I mean? And I don't think at the top end that AJ is done by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I definitely see him getting another title run, and I mean, you could be looking at something. If Cena was to win the belt, could you be talking about AJ and Cena at Mania next year? Just wow. That would be phenomenal, pardon the pun.
Absolutely. But yeah, a great tag match again. Some great interaction in it. Power of Omos, power of the two boys, coupled with the high flying of AJ Styles. Just absolute belter of a match, what I mean? And the boys retained, which was kind of cool as well. But man, I was shouting for the Viking Raiders. I have to say, I'm a huge AJ Styles fan, but I wanted the Viking Raiders to win. They were unbelievable,
And I don't think it'll do them any harm, the loss, they weren't buried by any sense of the imagination.
Not even close.
This'll keep them in, I wouldn't be surprised to see them pop back up again on Raw and be like, you know what, you might have got us, but we might see a 2 out of 3 falls or something like that, because they were only kicking the arse away from it, really.
Yeah. Let's talk about what I felt was kind of, I suppose, the weirdest match on the card, but we should have expected it. So we had the WWE Championship here, Bobby Lashley versus Kofi Kingston.
Yeah.
This was just a good old-fashioned beatdown, wasn't it?
It was a major beatdown.
I had to look back at the match again, and I was thinking, literally the only thing that Kofi got into the match was the duck at the start into the pin. Yeah. And after that, he just got demolished.
He was munched, absolutely munched for 15 minutes. I think Lashley needed it, if I'm honest. I think it's a clever move by WWE. I think it was Monday night on Raw. They played it really, really well, where Kofi was kind of getting into his head and was saying, you've got these women around you, you really need to focus and blah, blah. And then obviously he rips up the VIP lounge and you see this monster that he can be. And I mean, on last night's performance, he's a big, big star. He really is,
Absolutely. And even Lashley, Lashley just looks amazing. And the thing about it, he has MVP there, but MVP's timing of when he does stuff is absolutely perfect. He's brilliant at not overshadowing the stardom of Bobby Lashley, while still creating his own stardom within her business, if you like, that kind of way. So it's really, really cool, the dynamic between the two of them. They have it down.
It's I do feel a little bit sorry for poor Kofi though. We've seen this a couple of times with him, obviously, when he was champion and they put him in there for Lesnar to absolutely put maybe a lamb to the slaughter, and that's it. They've done it again to him last night. I know he kind of builds himself back up and stuff like that, but it can't be easy for you to go in there and literally just be a ragdoll for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it was, and then come out the next week on Raw or SmackDown or wherever and get a pop from people, because they've just seen you get absolutely, ripped to shreds.
Well, I suppose the one thing about the WWE universe is the loyalty of, the victim and the beatdown. They'll still say loyal to him and they'll still be, Kofi fans at the end of the day. I mean, they understand the business as good as anyone, and they understand that, there's a pathway to different things. So I don't think he'll do too bad out of it. It just kind of felt, I don't know, was it kind of as if he was feeling the brunt of maybe a Big E further down the line or something like that? Or
it was rough, man.
Yeah.
Now it could be a thing, Mister. I suppose touching on it there, that could be a clever move. That Kofi's been absolutely, turned inside out by Lashley. Yeah. And do we see Mr. Money in the Bank come to cash in on Lashley and be like, this is what you did to me, mate. It's now my turn, kind of thing.
The only thing is I'd be worried if I'm Xavier Woods, because he's probably due an awful beat down as well, then, is he?
But he might be, because he obviously got the roll-up win last week, didn't he? Yeah. He could be due a couple of slaps, all right. God bless him for Xavier.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm Xavier Woods, I'm sort of wondering down the line what's coming at me,
Definitely.
Let's move on to a match that was absolutely outstanding. The Raw Women's Championship. Rhea Ripley is champion, going in against the Queen of Cross, Charlotte Flair, who's absolutely wrestling royalty. Both in name and in ability, without a shadow of a doubt, presents herself like a champion. Rhea, I think, I don't know, she had a great rise to the top, got the belt and stuff like that, but it's kind of been a little bit strange, hasn't it, in terms of, has it halted slightly?
I think the push to get her there was a little bit too quick, if I'm honest. And I don't know whether people felt like that as well, because I didn't see a buy-in for it or for her the way maybe we could have seen one, because she was this massive star in NXT, and she got brought up, and all of a sudden, like, for me, she was a much bigger star than, say, Bianca Belair was.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if you look at it as the Raw Women's Champion and the SmackDown Women's Champion, Belair, for me, has pushed the limits, and Ripley has kind of she's trodden water a little bit, But I think you're right, by the way. I think, are we ever going to talk about a better female wrestler than Charlotte Flair?
Probably not, I would say.
Not for my money. And I know, people are talking about she gets all of these opportunities because she's Rick's daughter. Listen, guys, she gets all these opportunities because she is the absolute best to step into that ring. And that's facts, man. She's amazing. She really is.
Absolutely. Carries herself as a champion, wrestles like a champion. And listen, there's nothing wrong with using a little bit of what the father had and stuff like that, because the formula worked. But certainly she has taken aspects of her dad's career and she has pumped them into her own and made it her own. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because if you notice now with Charlotte Flair as well, when Charlotte Flair comes out, there's not so much of the wooing and the wooing and the wooing like there used to be with the dad's route. Now she's walking out there bona fide as Charlotte Flair, not Ric Flair's daughter, and she's just outstanding. Her ring work, incredible. Her moveset, incredible. Her endurance. The one thing that makes me shiver at times when I say it as well is that moonsault to the outside. When I say that, I'm looking at that, and my fear, and touch wood, it never happens. There's a broken ankle at some stage all over that without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, because Ripley didn't make a great effort at catching her last night. She does kind of shoot. Ripley comes to catch, and she kind of shoots through her arms.
Yeah,
and it does very much look like it's feet first. And again, if the impact's a bit much there, she'll roll an ankle and break it in pieces. You seen
absolutely.
how easy it was,
Yeah.
obviously, for McGregor a couple of weeks ago. So something like that, could happen very easily from the top ropes at that speed.
That's the only move I would turn around and say, well, maybe we need to look at that or keep it for when you're in a multiple women's match where there's a few women there to catch her or something like that, because she's literally coming down on it,
There's no need for to see certain moves at every pay-per-view.
Yeah.
You do need to keep them for the big four, maybe for the Royal Rumble, for the WrestleMania, Survivor Series, SummerSlam. Yeah. Keep your big move sets for then. Of course you want to put on great matches, but I mean, these girls, especially Charlotte, she's so good. You could put her working with anybody, and because of her moves and her skill set, she's gonna put on a good match. Yeah. And so there's no necessity to overdo it at times, which I feel like you're kind of alluding to a little bit.
And also vital to the company as well, because she's at that level that you can't afford her to be getting injured or being gone for a year or stuff like that. Even though they're drenched in women's talent, there's no doubt about it. But there's levels within this talent, even though the bottom level is awesome. She's at that pinnacle level at the moment, you know what I mean? So it's
100%.
Yeah, but an absolutely outstanding match, full on. I mean, this was like two lads in a bar having a row, wasn't it? Like they laid it in there. They didn't hold anything back. Rhea was outstanding in the match as well, because we always say it takes two to have a dance, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
But they were both absolutely brilliant in the way they worked each other. But you could see after it, they left a lot in there, you know what I mean? They'd given each other a proper beatdown, and there was definitely a kind of a tipping of the hat there in terms of the work that was put in,
Yeah, I wasn't not that I wasn't surprised, but there certainly was at the end of the match. You could see Charlotte looking over towards her as if to say, "Wow, you put me as far as I could go." That's impressive, because we had all those close pins and we had all those nearly moments as well, which kept us on the edge of our seat. It was very good. As a men's match, that would have been very good. As a women's, for me, it's phenomenal. It really, really is.
Yeah, and some of the reversals in it were brilliant, the way they did it and stuff like that, really.
Very impressive.
Yeah, and I tell you what I was really impressed with, that time when she was getting her up for the suplex, and I thought it was going to go wrong, and she stayed with it, and
that's right.
She horsed her up for that suplex. She was getting it no matter what. That
because
really
it's late in the day when she does it, which is the thing. It's the stamina. It's having that endurance that when you're 18 minutes into that match, because they got a good amount of time.
Yeah,
they were given a nice amount of time to display their skill set, and to be able to do that right at the end of the match was impressive. It really was.
Absolutely. Let's move on. Let's get into the men's Money in the Bank. I mean, this was like, I loved the dynamic of this match, because you had big men in there, you had sort of the middle of the road men, and then you had the high flyers, and you had a mix of everything in this match. So I was really intrigued to see how the dynamic of this match was going to go. And for me, I get very excited about Money in the Bank matches when the new guy, Johnny Drip, but of course we know him as John Morrison, is in Money in the Bank matches. It's because the creativity of that guy in those matches is unbelievable. And I'm not joking. He's probably one of the best in the business for throwing kicks in terms of the snugness and the impact of them. And I tell you, you can be guaranteed, I'd say lads will probably tell me on here, his kicks are as soft as anything. But boy, God, does he look like he's laying them in there. They look fantastic.
Yeah, he does really. He puts an awful lot into it. I mean, there's an awful lot of rotation as well. So you're buying off the fact of the way he's throwing the kick, and all of a sudden you see, and then it's like, wow, that was it's very, very good.
I kind of knew this was going to be a belter of match as well, because it just starts with the two boys diving to the outside. So it's like straight away we're off and running,
Yeah, and it didn't take a breath at all, which was, and we've seen Money in the Bank ladder matches like this before, or similar, at WrestleMania or at the pay-per-view. But this, for me, was right up there with the best Money in the Bank matches we've seen, if I'm honest.
It's weird as well, isn't it? Because Money in the Bank matches don't necessarily tell a storyline. But this one, kind of with Morrison and Seth teaming up and working together, we got a little bit of a storyline in there, didn't we? And I was kind of thinking, do you know something? Down the road in a year or two, or whatever it is, those two would be so cool as a tag team.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even see it where Rollins rolls in with the two boys.
Yeah.
And you end up with a mini Shield sort of thing, but obviously it'll be a completely different dynamic, because they're not going to sell it like that. But it could be, it could be something like that going forward, definitely. And they did work very well together. Morrison's Morrison's comedic timing for me is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
The way he does it, so good.
Yeah.
You see the moment with the water going on top of the ladder with Nakamura,
Yeah.
and it's just, and he's got the little cheesy grin, and you're like,
Yeah.
you're wetting yourself, and you're like, what am I even laughing at here?
And again, this is when I talk about peeling back the layers again, because these guys, when you think about John Morrison, that was never there before. This is kind of new to us in terms of seeing this in him. Because obviously Miz was always that guy. You know what I mean? And Morris was always that athletic guy who pulled off the big moves, stuff like that and all.
Yeah, no, 100%. Sorry, my battery's about to go. Let me just change it over here. Right.
Yeah, no, take your time.
You hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hang on, we're struggling. Technical difficulties. Hang on. Where's this going to end up? Oh, hit him with the chair. Let's hear it for. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you all good.
And we're back. Whew.
Awesome.
Sorry, man. The battery was about to go. Didn't want to end it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like it's like someone just went through your commentator's table.
I was like, what happened there? Yeah, exactly. The laptop went sideways and everything.
Talk to me about the moments in this match. That's
Ricochet.
Good
Ricochet
Lord.
From the top of the ladder onto the ropes, the spin, the jump. It was just phenomenal. It really was.
That airtime and height that he got. Oh,
and listen, God. Do you know what else I thought was amazing? Was Riddle with the RKO. Did you see the one he came off the ladder?
Yeah.
There was the first one he hit, and the second one where he pulled your man off the ladder and dropped it on him, and you were like, wow, and the timing of it was so good as well. Yeah. I think I said that to you just as we were kicking off. I wouldn't be a massive fan of Riddle, but last night, again, he did himself no damage at all. I think he really could be a big star in years to come.
I thought he was brilliant. Did you see his facials when Ricochet did that off the ropes and he was standing back at the ladder going, holy God, because Ricochet wasn't in. How did Ricochet nearly miss the rafters? He was so high up.
He was so high.
But he caught the springboard off the rope absolutely perfect, didn't he? Like it just shot.
And I mean, even before then, he'd come onto the rope, he'd come onto the turnbuckle, he'd walk the ropes, he'd jump from there, he'd gone from there to the opposite set. You were like, wow, is there? And everything was clean as a whistle. There wasn't a misstep here or a misstep there. He never wobbled. He was just smooth, going from move to move. And I mean, for a couple of years when he was in the independents, we were hearing Ricochet, and everyone, it was him and it was Will Ospreay, and you were like, these matches are amazing. And you were kind of saying, oh, he's a little bit of a spot monkey, and you were thinking, would he be able to? Listen, he can go. He can really go. I don't think that United States title run went as well as it could have for him. But I could certainly see him challenging again down the line. Because even for me, I could buy into a guy who's going to leave it all out there like that,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the moments. What about Kevin Owens? That was a heck of a bump, wasn't it, over onto that ladder?
Was a big bump, man. You were like, so early in the match, you're like, Jesus, KO, like, what's this? Like, you're going to struggle to get through this after this. Yeah. And I don't know whether, have you heard anything about whether the injury was legitimate or was he selling or what way were we?
I've heard nothing, but I know there was a lot of people around him checking on him constantly. I know there was one point we were looking at action in the ring and there was people on the far apron still dealing with him and stuff like that. And all,
it was, so again,
I'm not too sure.
KO for me, he could be one of the biggest names in the game.
Yeah.
He really could. When that music hits, for me, big wrestlers and the guys that I've always been able to buy into over the years, where when that music hit, you were alive. And I get that feeling when KO's music hits. I get that, oh wow, here's this guy. In the same way, you get that You Think You Know Me with Edge and when seeing his music hit, you're like, oh wow, you're like, so there's I think Owens again did himself, a lot of favors last night. Yeah. Again, I could see him maybe feuding. I thought he was very unlucky not to win the belt a little while ago with Reigns. But again, the way they were building Roman up, he was never going to win it. But I think some of the matches with Reigns in the last 6 to 8 months were amazing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Kevin Owens as well. I mean, like, how can you not like a guy who uses the stunner, you know, and he's awesome at it as well, you know.
He actually, did you see this Morrison seller through the
Yeah,
ropes?
yeah,
It was unbelievable.
yeah.
Really, really good by
Yeah.
Morrison, like, you know.
What was your thinking on Big E? Obviously, I mean, like he kind of drifted a bit in and out of the match, but then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's on the ladder and he's hitting the big. They were calling it what the big ending, but it
The
was
big ending.
then on commentary they said that was the biggest ending.
I suppose, and that's the thing that kills wrestling for me a little bit these days, is I've been reading this for a couple of weeks now, how he was getting this kind of a push, you know. He had the Intercontinental belt and things went well for him, and that they were gonna push him on to a bigger storyline and stuff like that. So I think he was heavy favorite going into it for most people. And I do love the element of surprise. And it didn't shock me that he won it. That was the only thing. Now, listen, he's a guy I can buy into. He really is. And his work is excellent for a guy his size, you know. He's so powerful, so strong. His mic skills, you know, they're very, very good. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of going into a match with 8 guys and us sitting at home kind of knowing who's going to walk out with that briefcase. Do you know? That's the only thing that kind of, and that's why I suppose the Nikki ASH thing, that's why that kind of resonated with me a little bit, because I didn't see it as much, you know, and I was like, oh yeah, I like that, you know.
I suppose going into the match, I had heard the information about Biggie kind of being nailed on a little bit, stuff for it. But when I got engrossed in the match, at times in the match, I'd forgotten that Biggie was even in the match. So when he did come and he hit the big ending and stuff like that, I still was slightly surprised. You know what I mean? And then, like, just to see him up there with the briefcase and he's cuddling it, and he's just like a big bear, isn't he? And he's just, you know.
And it was a shame we didn't maybe get to see Woods and Kofi come out to him at that stage. Now, obviously, Kofi been absolutely buried at that stage, and Woods was at home playing up, down. So, you know, but we might see it SmackDown this week, maybe something like that.
Well, see, I don't mind there being a little bit of distance there, because I'd like to see, especially him, you know, moving on to being that bona fide single star, if he's going to move towards cashing in on the title and stuff like that. And it's nice to see as well that they've started using the IC belt as well as the gatekeeper to the big title, if you like, the way they did it in the old days. So it's kind of nice, those little things coming back as well, even though the reign wasn't huge and all that kind of thing. But still, he had the IC belt, you know, test the water a little bit. Now he's moved on, he's won Money in the Bank. Next stage, move him on to a title. But if he wins the title, you know, it's his hard work that has got him there. He's been outstanding in there for years. But I think a little bit of that kind of celebration with the New Day, but then put it to the side and develop yourself as that top singles guy, you know what I mean? And kind of shed yourself a little bit of the pancakes and the booty O's and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and be that kind of,
because if you're gonna beat a guy like Lesnar or Lashley, you know, it's not going to be believable if you're doing it with pancakes and unicorns.
Yeah.
To a degree. So
exactly.
Yeah, you can be positive and you can be, but we may end up seeing a nasty side of Big E before he picks up that belt, you know, or a slightly meaner streak. And it might be the likes of Lashley goes and absolutely annihilates Kofi and then annihilates Xavier. So you've got that slight toy, but all of a sudden Big E's like, well, you know what, pancakes ain't going to cut it for me. I need to step in there as an animal and really go head to head with this guy. And then you could see a big match, you know. But the dynamic of the match for me was very, very good. You know, it really was. And I think, again, then what you've just said about the IC belt being the gatekeeper, you know, that for me, I mean, you're like me, we've been watching this a long time, you know, and we got Shawn Michaels with that IC belt for a couple of years before he stepped up. We remember Brett taking the belt off Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam, you know, before he got to step up. That's the way to go. Yeah. That's, you know, to go from...
Makes it so much more meaningful to us.
Yeah, and I suppose that for me is probably where they missed the step with the likes of Ripley, when she goes in and just goes, bam. Now, okay, they don't have a secondary title, but there's no stepping stone. They just launch them into the atmosphere and you're like, is this... You know, they haven't kind of legitimized themselves 100% because they've obviously come from what you would call the secondary programming, which is NXT. You know,
but maybe when they step up onto the bigger shows, maybe that's something that they should be looking at. Some sort of intercontinental title, but for the women's division, that gives you that bedding in to move to that top level, you know, and stuff like that. So maybe that's something they could look at. But certainly, this Money in the Bank delivered big time. You know what I mean? It was unbelievable. I mean, we'd be remiss as well if we didn't even mention the power of Drew McIntyre in the match as well. He was absolutely blasting guys. That guy's become a serious powerhouse. And then, of course, as you mentioned, like Jinder coming out and the boys doing a number on him and stuff like that and dragging him backstage and stuff like that.
It's gonna set up nicely for SummerSlam. We'll get Jinder and we'll get Drew. I hope they build it that long. I hope we don't end up getting it on Raw or SmackDown. I hope we end up, getting a couple more weeks of this where we obviously seen the stuff with the motorbike and stuff. I hope we get a few more weeks of this where it builds and builds and we let it stew and it starts to bubble and then we really get it when it's right on the tip of our tongue and it tastes the best,
Because especially with Jinder, creative with Jinder, you have to kind of be a little bit careful as well because it could go skew ways and lose its kind of interest very quickly. But when you have a guy in there like Drew who's a powerhouse as well, they've all the facets in there for a very successful run between the two of them and stuff like that, all the way to SummerSlam, So definitely look forward to that. But all in all, unbelievable match, like we haven't even mentioned even Shinsuke and, there's so much we could talk about in this match. But look, people, go watch it and watch it again and again.
And Rollins, who only played a bit part in it really for, his bigger spot was obviously later on to come. But I mean, for him to be involved and still not, again, they didn't bury him. No. He was still when he came out later on, you went, oh wow, it was still legitimate and stuff like that. So it was. Yeah. They wrote it really well, man. The storylines and as we said, stuff has been building, and I mean, it's really like SummerSlam is just already tasting like it's going to be amazing. Really is.
As you said earlier, they sowed a few seeds in the build up to this, and they followed through on them, even if they kind of weren't an intricate part of the match. They followed on some of those little feuds that they had set and stuff like that. So it was really good to see it. Let's move on. Main event, Universal Championship. The head of the table, acknowledge me. Roman Reigns versus Edge. This was unbelievable. I mean, I was pumped just looking at the entrances of both guys. Like, I mean, these are two mega stars now, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, like, Edge was an absolute monster star before he left.
Yeah.
And I mean, leaving the way he left, obviously, but then coming back. And I mean, he's just been gold since he came back. He really has.
Yeah.
I think if it's possible, his in-ring work has got better with time. And physically, he looks amazing. He was never always a ripped guy. 10, 15 years ago when we saw him, he was in good shape, but he was never ripped.
Yeah.
Whereas now, the physique has obviously changed a bit. He's slimmed down a little bit, but slimmed down and tightened.
Yeah.
And he looks just amazing. He really does.
Do you know what I thought was brilliant at the start of the match when the two boys are there in the ring and they're looking at each other, and Roman's there kind of with the belt and stuff, and they're just going, oh yeah, it's all about that, we'll see. You know what I mean? And he was giving Roman the heads up to go, listen, we're gonna have a war tonight, boy, you get ready. I'm gonna push you. Well, like you've never been pushed before. You've been in there with Lesnar, you've been in there with Taker, you're in there now with Edge, and you're gonna know you've been in a match. And I just thought that you could see the smirks on their faces. The boys knew they were going to create something special. They put this together really, really well, and it was awesome. And even to see that face off in the ring, like it was electricity. You know what I mean? It was like wrestling's back, fans are back, the pay-per-view is back.
You've got to give an awful lot of credit to Reigns, and again, as you said, the WWE for how they built them up recently and for peeling those layers back. We've got just one of the absolute best heels we've had in a number of years. A guy that when he comes on the camera, you want to start throwing rotten tomatoes at the telly. He's got that going on. But his in-ring work is outrageously good as well. You know, really, he's not just a heel that's talking. He's a heel that's walking the walk, but he's also talking the talk. You know.
And there's no waste. There's no waste with it. Like
Nothing.
every moment is precious. He soaks in every moment. He's slow, methodical. Everything you want out of like a new version of an old style heel, if you like, you know. And with Heyman there as well. I mean, and again, Heyman not dissimilar to say MVP.
Yes.
Knows exactly when to get involved and when to let the match do its thing and all, you know. Absolutely brilliant work being done there.
Because for a lot of the time, I would have envisaged Heyman being a lot busier for Reigns, but he hasn't been. Yeah. And I suppose that's when, you know, if you're somebody like, you know, if you're a manager and you're coming down the aisle like that with somebody, you obviously want to put yourself forward as well. Whereas Heyman's going, you know what? I don't need to put myself forward. Yeah. I'm already big in this game. Yeah. I'll do, you know, sometimes less is more. And that's exactly the way he's doing it. Yeah. And he's playing a blinder. Yeah, he really is. It'll be interesting to see if and when Brock returns, what happens, you know? Yeah. How's that going to go down? Does he have a stable at 2? Does he jump ship on Reigns? What, you know? I don't know.
Paul Heyman has a very big decision to make.
Yeah, and I mean, sure. Like, and you're probably talking about Lesnar not coming back to SmackDown either. You know.
Well, then Paul Heyman's going to be very busy. He's going to have to be at a number of shows then, isn't he?
It could be like that, you know. Yeah. Now, I'd be all right for that, to be honest with you. Yeah. I do miss the likes of having the Heenan family.
Yeah.
You know, where you had a little stable, 2 or 3 guys, 1 manager, and then every now and again, you knew someone was coming out of the pipework where they were going to get involved in a match and cost somebody, and then all of a sudden, you know, that kind of stuff was good stuff. We got that for a long time, man.
So we could be looking at the Heyman family where we'd have Brock, Roman, and the Usos. Good
and
Lord.
The Usos. And I mean, like, that's wow.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Fairly phenomenal, isn't it? That's some Survivor Series team.
That's Evolution 2.0, isn't it? Really, when you think
Jesus,
about it.
Man.
In terms of it,
who do you try and put in a ring against them?
You're gonna have to search, aren't you?
You're going, well, like, what are you going for? Like, so you're talking Edge and Cena?
Yeah. And you're gonna have to you're probably gonna have to throw Rollins in that mix as well and figure out how to turn it around, aren't you?
Oh, you're definitely gonna. Well, even if you put Rollins in there with Lesnar and with Reigns and the 2 Usos, then you're looking at, like, you know, maybe Randy Orton, John Cena, Edge, and then, you know, do they bring a tag team in or something like that to try and round it out? But again,
maybe you look at Lashley, maybe expand that Hurt business.
Maybe, like, but that's the potential in that is just huge. Do you see Goldberg come back and be the 5th member of a team? Maybe Daniel Bryan as well. Like, that's. But listen, like, that's fantasy stuff, isn't it?
Because I look at MVP with Bobby Lashley, and I kind of like, I think like Death Row Records. I think like Shub Knight or something like that. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, what about if we get a kind of a heelish John Cena in there as the doctor of thugonomics or something like that? He'd fit in there beautifully. You know what I mean? With MVP as well, you know. And I'm thinking,
I just don't think they'll ever do it, will they?
No. Well, they might sort of touch the surface with it for a while, because they've done that before without it being full blown.
Yeah, he's never, you know, he's really the only one we've never seen take a heel turn, isn't he?
Yeah, but it has to happen. It has to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you see, it's too much money in the bank with those T-shirts, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, like, look, they turned plenty of people heel in the past. They still sold shirts. Look at CM Punk. He was one of the biggest sellers of merch, and he was the most annoying heel in there for a long, long time. You know.
Well, I mean, Austin was a heel until the 6th one, and then all of us are the 316, and then all of a sudden, you know, they were looking for him to be billed, and the crowd loved him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't even know. I heard. Did you watch any of the? Did you watch what happened afterwards?
Yeah.
You saw what happened afterwards, you know, and are you guys all right? Well, why are you cheering me? You know, that was, you were just like, this is gold. This is gold.
Absolutely.
You
know? What was your thinking then? I mean, obviously within the match, I mean, it was hard hitting. There was some serious moves in there, and kickouts, very close pins. Then they, of course, go to the chair with the bar, and they're using the bar. I don't know how long. I mean, Edge's reversal out of that was brilliant, but I don't know how he had the. How long did he have the bar in Reigns' mouth? When Reigns got up, it's like his jaw had locked. It was in there so long. And I'm thinking, those beautiful teeth, Edge. Don't wreck those beautiful teeth on that beautiful.
They cost him a lot of money, man. He was in Turkey for 3 weeks.
Absolutely. And then I was thinking, okay, then, you know, we get the match and stuff like that, and it goes through it and stuff like that. And then Rollins attacks Edge. What a kick to the head.
Yeah, it was typical Seth Rollins, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it almost brought you back to the Money in the Bank moment at WrestleMania, where there's this match going on. It's Roman and it was Brock obviously originally, and now it's Roman and Edge. Yeah. And what I also loved was I loved Rollins at the end getting in Roman's face and telling him, you only have this because of me. Yeah. You know, that was more gold than you were thinking. That sets us up for further down the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way they built that story.
Remember me from the Shield, boy. Remember me from the Shield. I was the guy.
It was pretty
cool.
It was so good, you know.
So then the two boys go off and battle through the crowd and stuff like that.
Two boys go off, and you're kind of you're sitting there looking. You're going, something's gonna happen here. Yeah. You know, you could feel that part of it. Yeah. And I mean, I was watching. I was watching the golf yesterday, and it went on an ad break, and I switched channels, and all of a sudden I was watching Wipeout USA, and John Cena was hosting it, you know, and I hadn't seen him in a little while. He had this whole quiff going on, you know, and I was like, Jesus, look at John, and he had this leather jacket on and blah, blah. And little did I know, a couple of hours later, he was going to make his return. The pop was just amazing. If you're a wrestling fan and you didn't jump up off your couch or out of your bed, shame on you, you know, because that was the big leagues coming back. I'd say every little AEW gremlin sat at home last night and was just like, oh no. And they were getting further and further into the mire. And then when Cena's music hit, they probably just opened the casket, climbed in and closed the lid themselves. So they were like, there's no way back from this shit.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? Get the Jungle Boy out?
As he said on the tell, never give up.
Let's get the Jungle Boy out. Your man dressed as a dinosaur, and they've the neck to say that WWE do stuff about that's unbelievable. The bloke dressed as a dinosaur. Get the fuck out of here. This isn't Barn, man. It's actually all right. Jesus Christ. And then you're selling one of the biggest guys in the company. And listen, I love the guy. Goldust, Dustin Rhodes. Love him. But like, don't be selling him as he's a big player in the game. He was a big player 20 years ago when he was wrestling Razor Ramon for the Intercontinental title at the Royal Rumble. He hasn't been a big guy since then. You know, and every week I hear, oh, someone big is turning up on Dynamite. And then you get the Big Show, who hadn't got a match on WWE for 18 months.
On commentary. Because
he moves like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And then Mark Henry comes out, and you're like, I'm just waiting on Mae Young to start shooting babies out again. Like, this is, like, what the hell? And all the little boys in their AEW hats. Look what Santa got us. Put a zip on a kid, will you?
What was the thinking? What were you expecting when Cena obviously went down to the ring and he jumped in and stuff like that? And he was doing his thing, of course. He hits the ropes and does the run and stuff, and he throws the hat and all. I was sure when he hit that rope on the far side to throw the hat and turned around, I thought he was getting speared into oblivion. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah, I suppose they've kept that, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've kept that, which is great, because like that, now we're building again.
Yeah.
Now because they could have very easily gone that way and let him eat a spear, you know. But again, if he eats a spear straight away, it's a little bit too soon for it, you know.
I don't know. I'm thinking he eats a spear and then Roman is standing over him with the belt, just snarling. You know what I mean? And I thought, you know, that smile that Roman has, that kind of like methodical, gnarly smile. And I was thinking, Roman standing over Cena, buckled up in the ring. I thought that would have been amazing. Because I didn't get it, because he was kind of getting into Roman's face, but not getting into Roman's face. It's kind of like, I'm a star and I'm back, and doing all the hokey.
And I mean, the you can't see me was just unreal.
Yeah.
That was gold, and the timing. And again, even from that, the pop from that, they went bananas. Now, when you're a guy that can go and do something like that and not say a word and still make the biggest thing that happened last night, That's when you know you're a star.
Yeah.
You know?
And the one thing that stressed me last night as well, that pop that John Cena got, let's be clear about something. That wasn't a kid's crowd there last night.
There was two kids.
There
was 2 kids in the whole crowd. There were the 2 kids in the black and red robes sitting behind the commentary desk for the whole night. They looked like they were in house coats or, you know, and 2 little black and red robes. Other than that, everyone there was over 40. And that was a full adult pop.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Listen, I jumped up out of the bed myself, man. There's no point in me lying.
Got the baseball cap, threw it out the window.
I was crippled in the bed here with heat, you know, and the sweat was pouring out me. I had this fan on, the telly on, and all of a sudden I'm standing on that mat there watching that TV, and I'm like, I'm 16 again, and I'm like, Cena's back, and I'm ready to go into the other room and wake the kids and all. And, you know.
Yeah, it was just brilliant. You know, I often say to people, be careful what you wish for, because when it ain't there, you really, really miss it. And it's only when it comes back you realise what you've missed. And it's brilliant timing for Cena as well, because Cena without crowds definitely doesn't work. No. Cena in the Thunderdome just would not work, because he feeds off the crowd and he can change it up. He's so talented, he can change it up just like that, depending on how the crowd works and stuff like that. So the crowd to him is vital.
Yeah, no, 100%. And even his interaction, did you see the high five with the cameraman?
Yeah.
You know, he's like, and I missed you, when he booms the cameraman. You're like, this guy is just, you know, yeah. I don't, there's not too many stars like that that can just come back and light an arena up. We did see it with Edge, but I think we seen it in a different way with Edge, because there was a genuine, this guy's not stepping back in the ring here, is he? You know, there was a, whoa, this is something we never dreamed of. Whereas we knew Cena was going to come back eventually, the same way we knew Rock was going to come back eventually, but you didn't know when. And for them to disguise it well, and for them to be like, you know, we're going to just sprinkle a little bit of magic dust here. And it was just, that was a big pop, man. That was up there with some of the biggies of all time, if I'm honest. Certainly in this house, it brings me back to the Royal Rumble in Madison Square Garden with Triple H.
Yeah.
And Triple H has obviously put him on the shelf. And the number 30, and all of a sudden, din, 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 and everybody just goes, holy shit. It was unreal, man. Really was. Yeah. Enjoyed it.
Well, listen, absolute pleasure talking to you about the pay-per-view last night. I love when we come on to these episodes and we don't have to talk about the darkness of Dark Side of the Ring or something like that, and we can talk about the good stuff in wrestling and how we're enjoying it again. Like, absolute applause to all those fans there last night. They gave it their all and made it a huge success as well. All the superstars, absolute stellar job. This has been your former Podmen look back at Money in the Bank 2021. Quality pay-per-view. Darren, brilliant having you on. Head over to YouTube, the Dynamo Podcast Network. Let us know your thoughts down there in the comments. Did you enjoy it as much as me and Darren enjoyed it? And if you didn't, what the hell are you doing being a pro wrestling fan? Head over to
if you're an AEW mark, climb back into your coffin, because it's game over. You and Jungle Boy and whatever your man's name is with the dinosaur mask, hit the road, kid. Get your coat, you're leaving.
Get ordering those new John Cena shirts, Jungle Boy and all these guys. Audio versions of the show are available through Anchor, Spotify, Podbean, Apple iTunes, wherever you pick them up. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, @TPodman, Facebook, The 4Podman. Tell us how crazy we are. Shouldn't we come for this? Pro wrestling is back, baby. Till next time, Darren, a pleasure.
See you later, man. Thanks, Noel.